Welcome to CrossRoads on TVI. I'm your host, Manjula Salvaraja. We'll be covering a lot on our show today. We'll speak with the director of a much buzzed about documentary that's coming out this week called Oorana Oor, My Country. We'll talk about 23-year-old Mayuran who's fighting leukemia, desperately needs a bone marrow transplant, and is fighting the other battle, that is, the underrepresentation of South Asians in the bone marrow donor base. And finally, we'll talk to an author focused on the Tamil diaspora about the ups and downs of academia and his work. If you'd like to call in with a question or comment, our number is 416-623-8100. Now, some of you may have heard of the campaign to help save Mayuran. Mayuran is a 23-year-old who is fighting leukemia, a cancer of the blood cells. Here is a clip with some of the photos that were shared by his family. Hear about his battle and how we can help. Sharmila Philip is a good friend of Mayuran's, and Kaneshca Kasilingam is his cousin. Hailu Mulatu is the OneMatch coordinator of donor management. The OneMatch network is responsible for finding and matching volunteer donors to patients who require stem cell transplants. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So perhaps you can answer this for us. I hear that there is an underrepresentation of South Asian donors in the donor pool. What is OneMatch doing to combat that?
Well, OneMatch, thank you very much for that question. OneMatch is actually doing, lots of drive, both in terms of having swab events and online registration to increase the size and diversity of the OneMatch stem cell and marrow network. We currently have about 320,000 potential donors on Canada's network. Of these, 76 are Caucasians, and the remaining 24% will be from all Canada's diverse ethnic groups. So there is a strong need to increase the diversity of our network, which includes South Asian donors who are underrepresented. They constitute only about 3.5% of Canada's network. So we need more.
Okay.
And we need more optimal donors who, by definition, are 17 to 35, predominantly male donors. We focus on these young 17 to 35 years of old donors from the South Asian community because they are the ones who provide better outcome for patients like Mayuran and all other patients. We currently have about 34 patients from the South Asian community.
Really? So there's 34 South Asian patients that are in queue that are waiting for a bone marrow transplant?
Absolutely. They are waiting for a bone marrow transplant as we speak, and 24 of them are actually here in Ontario.
Okay. So there's certainly a need. Now, how does someone go about registering to be a donor?
Well, there are actually just, there are different ways. One is attending swabbing events, but, by far and large, the easiest and most efficient way of joining the OneMatch program will be online. Go to our website, onematch.ca, and people can register online. Registration has never been easier. So people can go to our website, and when they register, upon the completion of their application, we'll review their information and we'll send them what we call the swab kit to their home address. So people can do the swab at the comfort of their home and send it back to us.
Can you show us, I'd love to see, I've actually had one done myself about 2 years ago, and our entire family decided to get ours done, and it actually was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So if you could perhaps even do it on yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's actually just very easy. So this is just what people get when they register online. And there are, 4 swabs, 2 sets, there are 2 swabs in each. So what people need to do is, of course, once, the when they receive this, so all they need to do is, it's a very easy thing actually to do. It's like, easier than brushing your teeth per se. So they open this, and there are four, for the 4 areas of the cheek. So they swab the inside of their mouth, the back, the quadrant of their cheek, for about 20-25 seconds, harder than they brush their teeth. So it's just as simple as this. This is pretty much what they do. So there are 4 swabs. Each area will be swabbed with a different swab each time, and there is an instruction actually that comes with the swab kit. So they place it here, and they send it back to us. So
wow. So it just gets mailed back to you, and then they go into the donor base.
They will go into the donor base, and we'll be searching them almost on a daily basis to match them with a patient who has the same genetic marker or HLA as they do.
Okay.
And so the rest of the process continues. Yes, once you do this, you'll be added on our database.
So so now let's say, for example, myself. Let's say I just did that process, and I finished doing the swab. I mail it in, and within a couple of months, I am matched to someone. You said they were about 30. You said
34.
34 South Asians that are in line waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and there is a match. What happens next if there's a match between me and someone? What happens next in the process?
That's a very good question. I have to say, first of all, it takes some time. It might take a long time for someone to be found a match donor. It is a long-term commitment, and participation is voluntary. So this is why actually we need, people when they register our program, when they join our program, we want them to be really well informed and well committed. But to answer your question, when you're found a match, then that is when we contact you and we provide you more information about what it means to be a donor.
What does it mean to be a donor then at that point?
Absolutely. So what it means to be a donor, then there is actually quite a bit of information that will walk you through the whole process, anything and everything that you need to know about being a donor. And then if everything is okay, then of course you'll go also through a complete medical examination. That's to determine that you are medically eligible to donate. And again, if everything is okay, there are 2 ways that you can donate your stem cell. One is what we call a bone marrow harvest, and the other one is a peripheral blood stem cell, or stem cells donated from your blood. So it's similar to blood donation.
Okay.
And more, in fact, more and more, it is done now through your blood. It is done
as opposed to the actual,
the bone marrow harvest, the traditional way. So stem cells will be obtained from your freely circulating blood. That's about 75-80% of the time. That's how stem cells are donated.
Okay.
If it's a bone marrow harvest, it will be done under general anesthesia, although the donor would be asleep, and then stem cell will be extracted from the bone marrow, very small portion, and then that will be given to the patient. So it is not really as even the bone marrow harvest is not as painful as it's perceived to be. It's a very simple and easy procedure.
So it sounds to me that 70% of the time it is taken as from your blood, and then about 30% of the time from the bone marrow if you're a donor. What is the recovery like if you do get it from your bone marrow? What is the recovery like once that happens?
Recovery is very actually recovery doesn't take much time. What's happened? You spend overnight in a hospital, just a night or 2, and then you go home and spend a few days rest at home. So it is like whichever way you donate, by the way, you will get your bone marrow back, your stem cell back in anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. As recovery, it's a matter of a few days. Okay. You'll feel just a little pain in the area of donation, a little tenderness and pain in the area of donation, and all that requires is a painkiller. And in a few days, you'll be back to normal, to school or, work or your daily routine. You'll be back to your daily routine and normal, in a matter of just a few days.
Okay. Do you have any stories of sort of successful donations that have happened like that in the last couple of years?
Well, donation actually, I have to say, one of the most exciting parts of my job is, visiting donors at one of the hospitals, PMH. And there are people donating, at least one donor sometimes to every week or every other week. So yes, there are donors, these generous, volunteer donors, donating their stem cells in either of the 2 procedures to support someone, to save the life of someone that they do not know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is an ongoing thing, just something that happens actually just in our organization pretty much all the time.
And the important thing to remember that we're not just here also. I mean, we definitely would like to help Mayuran, but it's also for the other South Asians that are in the queue, and just for everyone else in Canada that may be needing it right now or in the future. And that's why we're having this conversation.
Absolutely. That's very important, really. I would like to highlight that. So, why we're here today, and, we are working, with the family of Mayuran to organize an event also sometime in June. So that is, to support Mayuran and all other patients like him.
Yes.
34 of them here in Canada only.
Okay.
So it is, yes, it is for any patient in need. That's really very important because, Mayuran's donor could be someone, somewhere in the world who registered to support any patient in need.
Yeah.
So that's
powerful. It's a
yes,
a very powerful thing, and probably good for you folks to hear as well. So thank you for being here. I certainly want to hear about sort of Mayuran. Tell us about him.
Well, Mayuran is just like every other 20 years old. He's actually 23 years old right now, and some of his hobbies are playing basketball, driving cars. He was actually a basketball coach in high school.
Okay.
So
and you're his cousin, right?
Yes, I'm his cousin. I'm Kaneshca.
Okay.
So he completed his elementary education and secondary education in Toronto, and he was going to school part-time. He was doing a business admin diploma at Seneca. So he was also working full-time to help support his family at the time.
Okay.
And in the middle of that, that's when he got diagnosed with leukemia.
Talk us through the discovery, because it happened sort of later for him when he was 22, right?
Well, it started with a bruise on his left feet, and then a couple of days after it started to swell. That's when he went to the emergency. We all told him to go right away, but I don't know what he was waiting for. Maybe he thought it would go away in a couple of days. And then when he went to do a blood test, that's when he found out he has acute lymphoblastic leukemia, ALL. And then they transferred him to Princess Margaret Hospital, where he spent like 8 months there.
And Sharmila, you're a good friend of his. What was it like for him to, what have the last couple of months been for him?
Oh, it was a disaster, like not only for him, but for his family and all the people who knew him. Because like he was there for 8 months, he didn't even get a chance to go out. So basically it was like a jail for him, like he couldn't even go out.
Now, can you explain leukemia to our audience? I think...
Well, leukemia is a form of blood cancer, so it attacks the bone marrow and the blood cells in the body. And the bone marrow is a soft tissue that's found in the bone. It helps produce white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets, which help fight infections and keeps us healthy. So when the bone marrow produces a large amount of immature white blood cells, that's what's called leukemia, because the immature white blood cells start to kill off the healthy white blood cells.
Wow, so it seems like the family's been doing their research, okay. So then my sense is that if he's exposed to any kind of small infection, what happens?
Well, he was in ICU for a month and a half because he caught an infection. And while he was in the ICU, they put him to sleep because he wasn't able to fight the infection. He had more pain. So when he was asleep, he was fighting all these different infections. He had pneumonia, his kidneys were failure, and he had blood clot in his heart because he wasn't moving, right? He was on the bed for a month and a half when he was in the ICU. So all this infection, they kept on pumping white cells. I don't know what the medication is called. They kept on giving him medication to increase his white cells.
Wow. And how do you think the donation, like you're running a campaign to try to get people to donate, right? To actually register as donors. And you've been doing a lot. I hear that you basically sort of walked through every Tamil store in Scarborough and Markham. Is that true? Tell me about that.
Yes, we both did, because most people, they don't know about this. We just went to explain what is leukemia, and then how there's a lot of people, not only Marian, a lot of other people are waiting for a donor. And most of them, they didn't know what leukemia was. So it was kind of hard for us to explain to each and every one of them, but I think we did what we can do.
Okay. Are there drives that are happening right now to try to get donors in? I don't know, Hailu, if you can speak to that. Any that are upcoming that people can go to?
Yeah, absolutely. Just by the way, yeah, just the family actually just they have been working really hard in getting
Very hard, yeah.
Yes, raising awareness about the need for more donors from the South Asian community, which is great. And we actually just wrapped up national the Chinese Other Half Chinese Stem Cell Initiative end of March, where members of the South Asian community went and attended. So, a few hundred people registered, at this event on March 31st. And there are other events also, and our events are listed on our website again, OneMatch.ca.
Okay.
So people can go to our website to see already scheduled events on our website. So they can go attend, something where they, nearby, where they live or where they work. And again, they can also register online. The easiest and most efficient way of registering or joining our program will be to register online OneMatch.ca. And right now we are working, with the family to organize a swab event sometime in June. We have not confirmed the date and the venue yet, but it will also be listed on our website very time soon. So we really encourage people to go again to our website and see the event we'll be organizing in honor of Myron. And we also encourage people, to join us on social media, on Facebook, facebook.com/OneMatch, OneMatch.ca. So, they can share their story and encourage people to raise awareness and to register with OneMatch Stem Cell and Marrow Network.
Now, the sense that I get is that it is actually possible sometimes to find a match within your family.
Yeah, but
was that, what are the chances of that?
Yes, and I can speak to that. That's very important, by the way, and this is why OneMatch exists. Thousands of Canadians require stem cell transplant every year. Mm-hmm. Of these patients, only 25% or less will get a matched donor from their own siblings. So in other words, 75% of the patients, or 75% of the time, people will rely on someone that they do not know to save their lives and give them a second chance at life, like patients like my own. So that is how it works. So that's why OneMatch exists. That's why we recruit and raise awareness to increase the size and diversity of our network. So that currently about 1,000 patients, 1,000 Canadian patients require stem cell transplant from someone that they do not know. A total stranger.
Okay, that is the staggering number. So now, I'm just because you're here and you can provide some insight into this. It was surprising for me to hear that there was an underrepresentation of South Asians in the donor base to a certain degree, but I'm curious to know why you think that is. Because you've gone out there, you've spoken to people, you've put up posters. Why do you think, and I would even go further to guess that that number is actually lower in the Canadian Tamil community. Why do you think that is?
Well, it could be a basic assumption that people have about what they think bone marrow is, because a lot of the people that we talk to, when they hear the word bone marrow transplant at first, they think it's an operation where the doctor cuts a piece of their bone and donates it to the patient, and they think it's like the cancer is contagious or there's more like dangerous side effects if they donate. Okay. So people, they don't really know what it is. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they're underrepresented in the network.
Okay.
Yeah, very good point. Actually, just that's absolutely right. It's lack of awareness. It's about lack of awareness that there is a need for donors from the South Asian community to support patients who suffer from leukemia and other blood cancers. So, and that's why we try. We work with different community organizations, and we have a community partner, by the way, South Asians for Life, that are working with us very closely.
Fantastic group. They've actually made a significant difference,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
In increasing the number of donors that have.
Absolutely. So the last few years we have been working with them. So they go out and raise awareness in within the South Asian community so that there is about the need for more donors. More stem cell bone marrow donors from the South Asian community. So it is, it's a continuous effort. It takes time. We have seen some difference in raising awareness in different ethnicities about the need for more donors from ethnically diverse communities. And it's about lack of awareness, about myth. And this show will help raise awareness about how important it is and how easy it is also to save a life, and particularly to join our program. by doing a cheek swab, which will help and which will give hope to patients, to Myron and all other patients with the stem cell transplant.
Out there. So how is the family coping?
Well, his family and friends have been there for him since day one, encouraging him and supporting him, and it's been a combination of emotions since day one, but we've all been there for him, and like he's been through many challenges in life. This is not the first one, but it's certainly a tougher challenge than he's faced before, but I think we believe in him, and we know that he's going to get through this.
Well, I have to say that the amount of effort that is being put into that campaign, and you have a Facebook page where people can find out more information. And what is that page?
Oh, it's so long.
It's fine, go ahead.
23 years old Sri Lankan male looking for a bone marrow donor.
Okay, and that's somewhere that people can go to find out more information, right? And I noticed that there were photos and sort of clips of the family there too. How is he doing?
He's doing much better now compared to before. Like I've been getting a lot of emails and messages from all over the world, not only from Canada, but from Sri Lanka, India, UK. Like when I read this to him, it just gave him a hope. He was just surprised that all these people, they don't even know him, but still getting tested and praying for him. Actually, people told me their own story, how they had leukemia, now they're living happily. These were just amazing stories that made him feel much better, and then he's now ready to fight. He's more positive right now.
He's buoyed by the messages.
Yes, and then it took him a while. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, he went to a couple other stages which made him to become who he is right now. And it will be because all of the support that we got so far.
Well, he's certainly doing a lot for actually even, you know, increasing the number of donors in the donor base by being very public about his story.
Yes.
Was there ever a feeling within the family? Because sometimes I've noticed within Canadian Tamil families that we tend to keep stories about health issues very private. Was there ever a...
Well, we did, but when the doctor said he needs to find a donor, that's when we published this because it's a life matter. And then we thought, there's no point of hiding this from anybody. This can happen to anybody, and we wanted to share this with everybody. That's why we publish it. But his parents were against it at the beginning. Really? Like even to publish his photo and stuff, like they were pretty upset. But
so would you say more the older generation as opposed to the younger generation?
Yeah. Myron didn't mind. He said, oh, okay, if it's going to help me, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But his parents were kind of...
Yeah, there is that reticence sometimes, right? Yeah. So what would you like to tell our audience? I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's been a lot of interest in his campaign and the fact that you're coming on the show. So what would you like to say to our audience?
Well, don't be ignorant about these issues because it won't really help. Like, put yourself in a cancer patient's shoes, even for a few minutes, and try to imagine what they're going through. And like maybe if you don't understand their whole story, you might try to connect with them even like to a certain percentage. And registering on the site, it could help anyone in the world, not just one person. And it'll really make a difference in their life. It can probably give them a second chance at life. And yeah.
Good words. So before we go to our break, Sharmila, would you like to share any words for what you'd like to have our audience do over the next while?
I would just tell them to get swabbed.
Okay, great. So you've heard it here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And again, the place you go to is onematch.ca. And please, the Facebook page again, if you could relate.
22 years old Sri Lankan male looking for a bone marrow donor.
We will have a link on our CrossRoads Facebook page to that if people need more information on it. Thank you for being here. It's much appreciated. I hope you at home will persuade your family and friends to register with OneMatch and get this young man back in good health to his family and friends. Let's take a short break. You are watching CrossRoads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Welcome back to CrossRoads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Our next guest, Lalita Krishna, is no stranger to the documentary community in Canada. Her documentaries have been screened at film festivals around the world, including the Toronto International Film Festival. In 2010, she won the Reelworld Trailblazer Award. Here is the trailer for her latest directorial work, the much talked about Oorana Oor, My Country.
We wanted to tell our story to the international society. More than 100,000 people died, nobody think about it.
Being in your own country, but being treated like a foreigner, because you didn't know the language of the people of the majority, and so now all of a sudden you're not a citizen.
உண்மையில கப்பல்லேருந்து வாரேன்னா பயங்கர கஷ்டம். ஸோ ஓசும் கூட போகாமல் குளிக்காமல் ஒரே செட்டோட 16 டேஸே பெரிய ஹார்ட்டாக இருந்துச்சு. சரியான கஷ்டமான நாடு.
Why would people just give up? But they haven't given up. We have such faith in this country. And that was a seminal moment for Canada.
You mentioned that they were here off the coast of Newfoundland. They thought that was actually another country.
Nobody can ever take away the Tamil part from me, but I don't have any other country other than Canada. This is my country.
Lalita Krishna is here in the studio with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I know that our audience has just seen the trailer, but can you tell us what this documentary is about?
Well, the documentary is about, I guess in some ways, it's the whole story of the Tamil community in Canada. And so you can't talk about that without talking a little bit about the history, about why people have come here in the first place. And knowing that the largest, I guess, Tamil community from Sri Lanka is actually in Toronto, outside of Sri Lanka itself, is, I think, pretty important, and not many people know that. So there are lots of stories, there's lots of history, there's a lot of reason why people are here. And I think it's very important to bring that story to a mainstream audience.
So what got you into, I mean, you have such a rich body of work that is, I would say, quite different from this. So what got you interested in this topic?
Well, it started with, well, I mean, I was aware of the history, obviously, I was reading up, but you're absolutely right, I haven't actually focused on political documentaries or history. I mean, that's not the kind of, I still think this is a human story, and that's what interests me in documentary filmmaking. And it was a human story that got me into it. I heard about the boats that came in 2009, 2010, the MV Sunsea and the Ocean Lady. Mm-hmm. And I saw the images. I mean, there was this one image I remember of, you know, it's quite visible, it's very graphic, of a woman with 2 kids.
I know, I even remember that image.
And it's a rainy day, and they've got umbrellas. And then there was this comment, you know, about who are they, and terrorists, and they're going to be interrogated. And I was like, people have come on a boat enduring this horrendous experience, and then you're going to put them into interrogation, 6-year-old kids. I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe that Canada, which is, you know, this compassionate country, but we do have a history with boats and turning boats away, of course.
Yeah.
So that got me into it. And of course, I mean, obviously, I have a lot of friends and people from the community. I'm always wanting to get the story out, and this seemed to be a good way to get into the story.
Now, it's interesting that you bring that point up about the reaction that was on web blogs and internet sites, because people that you talked to that were here at the time of the migrants arriving in the 80s, the boat migrants in the 80s, thought the reaction was very different then. It was a little bit more sort of open arms. And this time around, I mean, did you notice that? And what was your reaction to that?
It's very true. In fact, it's there as part of the documentary, because we went back to the first boat, which brought the largest group of Tamil asylum seekers from Sri Lanka to Canada, which was in 1986. Mm-hmm. And it so happened when I was doing my documentary, just 25 years since the first boat arrived.
That's right, yeah.
And it's interesting because that was also a conservative government. But Jerry Reno, who was the Deputy Minister of Immigration at that time, actually was interviewed not too long ago, And he said, I would never turn around. I couldn't do this to a boat under my watch because we've had a history of turning boats away, and his own people, meaning people who were Jewish after the Second World War, and Canada had turned people back.
And then we had the Komagatu Maru, which is the boat, the boat of Indian migrants that were turned away.
That's right. So we've got that history, and I guess it's a different situation now because after 9/11, there's this whole terrorism and terrorist kind of fear, I guess, or an excuse, whichever way you want to look at it. And everything's clubbed under that big umbrella. And it was completely different, the reaction, and it still is. I mean, people's cases haven't yet been heard. There's a whole bunch of issues going on. Everybody's got lawyers. And meantime, all the people who've come, over 500 people, are just sort of hanging in limbo.
Wow. And you got to meet some of these folks?
I did.
Okay.
I met, my researcher met a large number of people. Actually, she had gone to Vancouver, and that's how we sort of started talking. She met a great number of people, and Gary Anandasangare, who's in the film, he met all of them actually, and he talked to me about it and the stories that he heard. He was the first person they met when they got off the boat, and he heard their initial sort of stories, which was interesting because I think people didn't talk so much about the journey. He says that was a little postmark in terms of their actual experience, because what they'd endured before and the shock of what they were enduring after landing was much more of a I guess a horrific experience for them, that they were focusing on those, and then that the journey itself would probably emerge later on for them to describe.
Interesting. Now, were there any, this looks like it's going to be a very compelling documentary. I know the premiere is this Thursday. I get the feeling it'll be sold out.
I hope so.
There's certainly a lot of interest in the documentary. How easy or difficult was this to make?
Usually for me, if you ask any documentary filmmaker, the hardest part is the financing for us. When you get started, you have an idea, and then you have to go out, and then you've got to convince people that you have an idea. I was very fortunate that Omni, and I have to mention them, were very supportive. They wanted they felt this was an important story to bring out, and that really worked for me, and that was very helpful. We have the Canadian Media Fund, I've kind of fitted into a particular funding envelope. So that, which usually is a challenge for me, was easy.
Okay.
Then I got on to it, and then, as I mentioned, my research, I thought it was going to be a breeze because she'd already met a lot of people, and I brought her on because she had gone to Vancouver and interviewed people, and they actually did a photography exhibit with people's stories. What I didn't realize was that one of the conditions of doing that photography exhibit was the people had to be anonymous.
Anonymity,
She could use their voices sometimes, or she narrated over their voices, but they didn't want to be exposed. So that became a huge issue. I could hardly do a television documentary without showing people's faces. And so I had to compromise, because to me, showing someone's silhouette, or doing a cutout, showing voices, hands, you make it more sinister than it is. You do that to people who are criminals, or people who are in jail or something. Here, by the very fact that you're not showing people's faces, you're kind of criminalizing them, and you're having the opposite effect of what you want to do, which is to show their faces and have compassion for their stories.
So why do you think there was that sort of reticence of people coming forward to speak to you openly on camera about their?
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. I met, and that was a really big challenge, because there were 4 times. This is a record for me. I've never had this situation. 4 times where we had actually booked a crew. I'd gone first, met the subjects, heard their stories, very compelling, very open. One person spoke to me for 2 hours. She didn't stop speaking. She spoke 2 hours nonstop. From the moment I entered, we sat down, and she went nonstop, 2 hours. So I said, wow. Then I just said to her, I said, I'll come back. We agreed on the date, and she picked it, and I said, these are the B-roll shots I need. This is what I'll do. I'll spend the whole day with you. We'll do this. And she said, fine. She calls me one day before we were actually supposed to film and said, I spoke to my husband. He's back in my hometown, and he said, don't do this. He says, because of fear of repercussion on him once her story comes out. And I said, but I'm not doing investigative reporting. You're just telling me your story. You don't have to tell me who's responsible. I don't want to get into the politics. I just want to hear the human side of the story. How did you come here? That's. So she said, well, I've been advised not to speak. Another person who was there during the time of the actual, the war, 2009, again, same thing. She was ready to speak to me. It was the day before. I'd gone there, spent this time, we spoke about it, and she said, I really want to do this because I think it's important, because I'm going to write a book. I need to tell my story. Everybody needs to hear it. Next day, 1 hour before we were scheduled to be there, I had to cancel the entire crew. And she said, I can't do it. She said, my family here have told me not to speak.
And what do you think, what is your sense? Because you experienced this 4 times in other interviews too. What is your sense why people are not, why there's that sort of, aura of silence or keeping silent?
There's two reasons, I think, 2 main reasons. One is, I think there is a fear of repercussion. There's a fear of what will happen if they speak to the people back home. There was a genuine, fear. And I certainly didn't want to put anyone in, at risk. I certainly was not, I'm not one of those journalists who goes out and says, story at any cost. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I didn't push them either when they said they were reluctant. It was something that I didn't want to do, because the one thing I believe strongly is that you have to, as a filmmaker, I have to have the confidence of the people that I work with. They should have the confidence that I'll make a film about their story and do justice to it. I'm always anxious before I show my films to my subjects, and they should feel that I've done, it's
my view,
it's an honest
what
portrayal.
I said has been represented. Yeah.
So I didn't push them. So I think there is that fear of repercussion, which I can understand. The people who have come on the recent boats, their cases haven't been heard, so they've been advised by their lawyers not to speak. So I guess for whatever reason, that's what they've been advised. And a couple of people actually spoke to me. One person actually did his whole interview in silhouette. I got his story, and because I was trying to figure out, creative ways of doing this, maybe at one point that was a consideration. But I think there is another sort of very important reason, which is, I guess it's still a new community. People are not used to seeing themselves enough in the media. They don't see people like themselves. And so there isn't that sense of confidence. And there is a fear, and there is a genuine fear of authority and, of misrepresentation of media. Because if you look at it, mainstream media has portrayed negative reports all the time. When is the last time you saw on, in any one of our mainstream channels, a story about, think about the stories that you've seen, right? And, we all sort of talk about
I hear that rant so often, Lalita. I can't tell you how often.
And I had people saying, why are we not seeing, I said, well, change the image, take ownership, go out there and talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy because Ranjana, who's one of the subjects in the film, she came out and just, it was such an honest portrayal of their everyday life and what happened and how they left. And it's not, there is no repercussion to this. It cannot be. It's just literally she and her mother and her daughter, are sitting down and talking about it. So, they need to understand that children and the next generation and other people
need to hear that there needs to be the legacy of stories passed down.
Otherwise,
well, you're going to add to that. Now you've added to that.
Well, people who forget history will repeat it, right? So you need to make sure that this gets told.
Well, congratulations. I think this is going to be a great premiere. So how do people find out about tickets? It's reelworld.ca?
It's reelworld.ca, and there's a thing for tickets, and Oorana Oor, My Country is
great. Thursday at 4.
Thursday at 4
Great.
p.m. Famous players.
Fill the room, people. Thank you again for being here. For more information on the screening, again, it's this Thursday at 4 p.m. Please visit reelworld.ca. We will have some information on our Facebook page about it as well. Let's take a short break. You're watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja.
We wanted to tell our story to the international society. More than 100,000 people died. Nobody think about it.
காப்பாற்றல அவரும் பயந்துட்டார்.
Being in your own country, but being treated like a foreigner, because you didn't know the language of the people of the majority, and so now all of a sudden you're not a citizen.
உண்மையில் கப்பல்லேருந்து வாடுறேன் பயங்கர கஷ்டம். ஸோ வாஷ்ரூம் கூட போகாமல் குளிக்காமல் ஒரே செட்டோட 16 days பெரிய ஹார்ட்டாக இருந்துச்சு. சரியான கஷ்டமான நாடு.
Why would people just give up? But they haven't given up. We have such faith in this country. And that was a seminal moment for Canada.
You mentioned that you were here off the coast of Newfoundland, that was actually another country.
Nobody can ever take away the Tamil part from me, but I don't have any other country other than Canada. This is my country.
Welcome back to CrossRoads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Let's get to this talk about academia, perhaps a path less traveled. Amarnath Amarasingam is working towards a PhD in religious studies and has held a Research Council of Canada doctoral fellowship. He's the editor of 2 books and has contributed to many publications, including the Toronto Star and the Huffington Post. He's currently working away on a dissertation titled Pain, Pride and Politics, Sri Lankan Tamil Nationalism in Canada. Good to have you here. Well, you've been here twice before.
Twice, yeah.
Twice. It's the 3rd time on the show. It's a lucky charm. So why did you choose academia? Like at some point when you were going through university, you must have made that choice. Why is that?
I started to really like working in my pajamas for most of the day, right? So and I can't overemphasize it. It made a lot of sense that I could.
So just laziness,
or not willing to tuck in my shirt, right? Or I liked the idea of a group of people that society, allows to exist, who just read and write and think all day, and somehow, don't tell anyone. We also get paid for it, right? So I like that idea, and I'm drawn to it. So I think I have an inclination for it. It's naturally what I do in the morning. I wake up and I read, and I like being able to do it, and it does. I'm more drawn to stuff like that than office work or any other kind of traditional job, right? So that's basically why I made that switch in late undergrad to wanting to do my master's.
So it wasn't from when you were sort of 12 years old, it was more like halfway through university.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not really taught, especially in the Tamil community, I guess, that is a profession that is doable. You hear about journalism, you hear about professors, but you don't, the academic angle that you can actually do it full-time isn't really taught to you or told to you. And so I've had to kind of wrestle with it and figure out where I fit in and what I want to do and what kind of things I want to research. And so it's been a constant, a wrestling match within
wrestling match. So there must be points that are really hard about being in academia. What is difficult about doing this?
Well, I mean, I have a deep kind of joy for writing. And reading and learning, but at the same time, it is one of the most excruciating experiences of academia. It's just I've sat in front of a laptop, looking at a blinking cursor for an hour before, and then giving up, right? But I've also had days where I can churn out 15 pages or something. So writing, even though I love it so much, it's also one of the most difficult things. And I think you'll hear that from novelists and a lot of other people too, where it's just the amount of time and patience and thought that goes into writing, and in academia actually making a contribution to the field of knowledge or doing the research and having enough time to think about what you've found or making an argument, making a clear argument, a logical argument. These things take hours, right? So that's part of one of the difficulties of it is it's not an easy thing to do, and it's not for everyone, right? And I don't mean that, I don't say that to mean that, you know, people aren't smart enough for academia or something, where you do have to have a certain inclination or a certain personality to go into academia, where it is a very lonely thing. You do spend a lot of time by yourself with books and writing, and you don't, you know, you're not a politician, you don't go shake hands all day long, and or sometimes your work may not even have any policy relevance, right? So it is a very lonely kind of thing, and so that is one of the difficulties of it, and but at the same time, I can't really picture myself doing anything else.
So that's interesting. I mean, even though you say that it's a lonely thing, I know that you make such a concerted effort because you're working on a dissertation that is on the Canadian Tamil diaspora. You work on networking, you work on getting out there and speaking and writing. What are some of the skills that you think that make for a successful academic, above just being really good at the topic that you're working on?
Yeah. I don't know if networking is all that important for academia, mainly because it's a lot of what you produce, right? So it's, in academia, there's a real sense that what you write and put out there does kind of the networking for you, right? So based on the value of the work that you put out, you're invited to write book chapters, or present at conferences, or, you know, speak to the great Manjula Selvaraju, right?
Please.
So I mean, the work you put out there does the networking for you and builds your credibility that way. But I don't really spend that much time, aside from online, actually schmoozing, right?
Okay.
Whereas I think one of the great skills that is required is this kind of patient picking away at a topic, or picking away at to see what kind of, because all of academia is centered around, are you making a contribution to what's already out there? You know, there are hundreds of years people may have said something about a certain field, and now you have to come along, do your research, and actually say something that hasn't been said before to a bunch of experts who know the field inside and out, right? So do you have the skill set to do that? Are you so have you taken enough time with the material? Have you learned it well enough to actually do that? That is what takes up most of my day, right?
Wow.
So once that's done, that kind of builds your reputation and does the networking for you, right? So I don't actually have to put on pants or go outside.
I'm trying to imagine, and I want to get you to talk about your dissertation, but I'm trying to imagine you working in your pajamas on your dissertation. So tell us about your dissertation.
I've been researching it for about 2 years, and it is on the Tamil community in Canada. And I think Lalita was speaking earlier about this, where it is bizarre that a community that has been here for over 30 years, there isn't one book on the community, right? There isn't one book on the Tamil community in Canada. There is some stuff in terms of Norway and other countries. But so part of my focus has been to look at, so now you're here, there's a post-war environment, and we've had a kind of history of mobilization and activism and lobbying for a long time. So what is left of all of that momentum, all of those organizations, all of those identity issues post-war, right? What happens from May 2009? What are the youth doing in terms of religious identity, ethnic identity? What are the organizations doing in terms of all of their leadership battles that we always hear about? What is the significance of the protests that happened from January to May? Is that kind of a flashpoint where identities are reworked and people start to get socialized into a different way of looking at things, either through a human rights framework or whatever? So that is the dissertation, kind of looking at what happens to all of this momentum that existed, and then obviously where do you go from? If you have reworked your identity, then where do you go from there, right? So that's what I've been swimming in for the last 2 years. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, we'd love to have you back when that's ready and hits the shelves. Thank you so much for being here to tell us about it. So there you go. You have Amarnath. You can look him up on Facebook, and some information about him is on our Facebook page too, and the 2 books that he's done previously. Speaking about academia, Sindhujan Varadaraja, a UK-based academic, is conducting a study of caste in the global Tamil diaspora. Our Facebook page has a link to the survey he would love for people to fill out. Please do take a minute to do so, because he will be joining us this summer to talk about the results of his study on caste. What I see to be a great topic for a hot summer debate. So that wraps up our show for today. Thank you all for joining us. You've been watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Have a wonderful week.